Sports and Light analyst Richard Oliver in to help us break down what might not be something that we can break down. Unprecedented, Richard. We're just talking about this before we started rolling here. Have you ever seen anything like this in terms of coronavirus and what the NBA has done in terms of suspending its season?
No, and it's remarkable when we think about just not just the NBA, but just the seismic impact of even Major League Baseball in Seattle shutting down crowds. March Madness,
Right.
Hey, we're not going to. They may end up shutting that down. Period. Just going back in my meager brain cells, just trying to think of my memory. I don't know, Hector, you and I have done sports for a long time. You could think of ideas, 9/11, different things that have happened, hurricanes, something that,
Right.
damage to a stadium from different things happening, natural climate stuff. But to have something like this happen where there's a pandemic that's absolutely affected society to the level where you're walking away from the hundreds of millions of dollars that the NBA and March Madness and go down your checklist of different things that are happening in sports are being impacted by this. It's absolutely remarkable. I told my son the other day, yesterday, I said, circle March 11th on your calendar, because in 10 years we'll be talking about that date. Houston Rodeo shut down, the president with his travel ban, what happened with March Madness saying we're not going to have any crowds at these games, the Big 12, SEC, all those different kind of conferences. Go down the checklist, and then, of course, the NBA having players tested positive for coronavirus and everything. That was a day that was just a confluence of some really remarkable events.
Jazz star Donovan Mitchell testing positive. Rudy Gobert, the main reason, as we go back to last night, in terms of why the NBA did what it did once he tested positive. His teammate, superstar Donovan Mitchell, has been tested positive for the coronavirus. And then locally, you talked about the impact locally, the UIL state basketball tournament. You mentioned the SEC and the Big 12. Texas Athletics saying no fans in attendance for our sporting events through, I think it's the 22nd. And Baylor football pushing back the start of their spring practice, which was supposed to happen next week. So it's something that's being felt throughout. The NBA is the big headline, but something that's being felt throughout. And we were talking about this as well, Richard, is folks like us, and we're not trying to play doctors here, but from what the science tells us, from what the experts tell us, folks like us are okay. Kids are okay. Right. But where the problem is and why all this is happening is not so much the fear of, oh my goodness, you can't get this. Donovan Mitchell's now in serious trouble, although obviously we wish him and everybody else who's suffering from the disease a speedy recovery. It's the possibility of transmitting it to the elderly, and they are the ones who are at serious. So it's more precautionary, more so than it is it's the end of the world and it's happening now, which I think some people may think based on this series of events, especially the ones you just mentioned happening last night. Yeah,
and you think about this being a respiratory pathogen that kind of preys on people who have respiratory problems. They have some different things. And it was interesting, you kind of talked about it, and I don't really think about it to this degree, but you and I were talking off camera, the idea that the players just handshakes and high fives to fans and all the different kind of things that happen, and they go out, it's a tree. I mean, it's just branches just spread. We joke about social media being that way. Listen, it starts here, it just kind of spreads out. That's what something like this is like. You go home to grandma and give her a hug. You go home to somebody who's maybe already got the flu or some kind of something that's really preying on them, and they're having those kind of issues. This is about those folks. Rudy Gobert is a healthy, middle-aged or probably young male. He's fine. He's going to survive this. It'll be a fever. He'll go on. But all the NBA, all the different people he's rubbed up against, all the players that he's gone after, on the court and all those different kind of things. That's where we have the problem. That's what this is all about.
Right.
This is not about you and me.
Right.
It's about the folks that we come in contact with if we had this disease.
And why are we speaking so confidently about Gobert and Donovan Mitchell being and being okay and being fine? Because the science so far has shown us that for the cases in China, the cases globally, folks have been able to recover. Folks who previously were in good health have been able to recover. Right. And so that's what we're seeing so far. See what happens the rest of the way, but to this point, that's what's going on. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here in terms of your best guess is let's talk about the NBA here and putting you on the spot. Your best guess is to what happens the rest of the way. Are we closer to the league picks up again, April extends the regular season and thus the playoffs? Or are we looking at more along the lines of no more basketball for the rest of what would have been the 2019-2020 season? If those are your two options, Richard, which do you lean more toward right now?
If we're going to go all the way to April, let's just say we have a month of not playing basketball, I think you stop the seedings right where they are. Playoff seedings, Eastern, Western Conference, and go for best of 5, maybe the first couple of rounds, do a more condensed playoff schedule until you get to the finals. Then you play your best of 7. I think that's what I would do at that point, just because they don't want to push into the Olympics. Let's just presume there is an Olympics at this point.
Right.
You get much past June. Listen, these guys don't want to be playing basketball. If you're LeBron and some of the folks who may be in late in a conference championship or an NBA finals, they'll be playing all the way up to the Olympics. It'd be very, very difficult. That's what I would see happening. I don't know if it's another month, I don't see the regular season closing out. I think we might have seen our last Spurs game in that situation. Pretty interesting.
All right. So as we leave you, wash your hands. Be careful.
Right. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Be careful.
Yep.
It's we've talked about how it's not end of the world, but it is pretty serious.
A little more of this. A little more of this.
Evident by what we've seen over this last 24 hours or so.
Absolutely.